Have you ever felt like you're just existing in a space but no one really sees you? That's how I've always felt in my family, just there. Not the golden child, not the troublemaker, just the one stuck in the middle. The one who did what was expected but never quite enough. It started with small things. My parents forgetting to save me a plate at dinner. My brother Daniel taking my things without asking, knowing no one would care when I complained. They never outright said I wasn't wanted, at least not at first. But it was there, like the shadow that follows you in a dimly lit room. It wasn't about what they said but how they said it, or more often how they didn't say anything at all. My existence seemed like an afterthought. I tried to brush it off. Families aren't perfect, right? Maybe I was just being sensitive. Maybe if I worked harder, did better, they'd finally see me as someone worth keeping around. So I kept pushing. I made sure my grades were solid. I helped out around the house. I stayed out of trouble. But it never seemed to matter. Daniel, on the other hand, could do whatever he wanted. Talk back, skip chores, fail a class. It didn't matter. My parents made excuses for him. He's just a kid, they'd say. He's going through a tough time, you should be more supportive. Every time I pointed out the difference in how we were treated, I was the problem. I was being difficult. And then one day the resentment boiled over. But not from me, from them. It was a Saturday night. I had just gotten home from my part-time job at a local grocery store. Nothing special, just a weekend gig to save up some money since my parents never really gave me much. Daniel, on the other hand, didn't have to lift a finger. Anything he wanted, he got. I walked into the house, tired from the day's work, and the first thing I saw was Daniel sprawled on the couch, controller in hand, completely zoned into his game. A half-eaten plate of food sat on the table and on the floor, my backpack open with my notebooks and papers scattered across the rug. Dude, what the hell? I sighed, bending down to gather my things. Oh yeah, Daniel muttered, not even bothering to look away from his game. Needed paper, took some. I flipped through my notebook, my stomach sinking as I saw it. My notes. The ones I had spent hours meticulously writing down, now torn out. I clenched my jaw, holding back the frustration threatening to rise. Are you serious? Finally asked. He glanced at me, barely registering my presence. Relax. It's just some dumb notes. Not like you do anything important anyway. The words hit harder than they should have. Maybe because deep down I knew that was how he saw me. That was how they all saw me. Like I was nothing more than background noise in their lives. Where are they? I asked, my voice tight, barely controlling the tremor of anger. He scoffed. Dunno. Probably in the trash. And that was the moment. Something inside me snapped, but not in an angry, screaming way. No, it was a cold, quiet realization. I wasn't one of them. Not really. Not in any meaningful way. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. You're unbelievable, I muttered, walking past him toward the kitchen. That's when my parents walked in. They were laughing about something, some private joke between them, a world I had never been part of. But the moment they saw me standing there, the mood shifted, like the air itself became thick with tension. What's with the attitude? My dad, Mark, asked, his eyes narrowing, suspicious. I exhaled sharply, still gripping my ruined notebook. Ask him, I said, nodding toward Daniel. He tore out my notes, just threw them away like they were nothing. My mom, Rachel, barely looked up from whatever she was thinking. It's just paper, she said, waving a dismissive hand as though I was making a mountain out of a molehill. I looked between them, waiting for something, anything. A simple, that wasn't cool, or don't do that again. But there was nothing. Instead, Daniel smirked, his confidence radiating as if he had already won. Yeah, it's just paper, he echoed, like he knew the game was over before it even started. I felt my fingers tighten around the notebook, the pages crumpling in my grip. Of course. I was nothing but a problem, a nuisance to them. I turned to head upstairs, but my dad's voice stopped me mid-step. You know, he began, his tone low and cold, this attitude is exactly why no one wants to be around you. I froze, the words hanging in the air like a weight I couldn't escape. What? I asked, turning slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. For a moment I thought I might collapse. The weight of their words hit harder than anything Daniel had ever done. Was I really the problem? Were they all right? You're always like this, my mom sighed, her voice drained of any patience. You overreact to everything. Always playing the victim. Always causing problems. Causing problems, she added as if the words had been rehearsed. I let out a bitter laugh. For what? Expecting basic respect for not wanting my stuff trashed? My brother snorted. God, you're so dramatic. I shook my head. You guys act like I'm the issue, but you don't even see what's happening. You just let him do whatever he wants. My dad folded his arms, his gaze hardening. Because he's not the one constantly whining. That hit hard, but not as hard as what came next. My brother leaned back on the couch, arms stretched behind his head and smirked. No one wants you here, man. I felt my stomach drop, but it was my parents' reaction that shattered something deep inside me. They nodded. They actually nodded. My mom didn't say a word. My dad didn't argue. They just stood there, silent, as if that was a fact they had accepted a long time ago. I didn't yell. I didn't beg for them to take it back. I just breathed. And something inside me went cold. Okay, I said simply, my voice barely a whisper, but it was final. I walked upstairs, packed my bags, and I left. But this wasn't the end. Not even close. The next morning my phone was blowing up with 12 missed calls. I didn't answer. I just let it ring, watching as the notifications piled up. My brother, my dad, even my mom. For a family that didn't want me, they sure were desperate to reach me now. I wasn't in a rush to pick up. After I left the night before, I didn't even have a plan. I had thrown my things into a duffel bag and just walked out, feeling numb. I crashed at a friend's place. Someone who actually gave a damn about me. He didn't ask questions, didn't push. He just handed me a blanket and said, "You can stay as long as you need." It was more kindness than my own family had shown me in years. But now they wanted something. And I had a feeling it wasn't because they missed me. By the time the calls finally stopped, a few texts started rolling in. The first ones were just as I expected. Mom texted, "You're being immature. Come back." Dad texted, "Enough of this nonsense. You need to stop acting like a child." I scoffed. Yeah, I really left, and they clearly weren't sorry. Then a new message came in. One that changed everything. Mom texted, "Come home now. We have a problem." I stared at the screen, my pulse picking up. A problem? I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the best of me. So I finally texted back, just 2 words, "What happened?" Her reply came almost instantly. "Your brother's been arrested." And just like that, I knew they didn't miss me. They didn't want me back. They needed me. And that gave me an idea. Reddit updates. Dad called me 12 times in a row. I watched each call go unanswered, the screen lighting up with his number over and over again. I didn't feel an ounce of guilt. He had made his choice long ago. And now, his desperation was just another reminder of how little I mattered until they needed something. Then a text appeared from Mark, finally revealing what was so urgent. "Your brother is in custody," the message began, and I couldn't help but read on. "He was arrested for theft. Apparently he stole from the wrong people. Some guys from that arcade he hangs out at. They reported him and the police have him in holding. The cops said they'll release him, but they need to speak with a lawyer first." I exhaled slowly. This was the moment I had known would come, but I never thought it would be this ironic. My brother, the golden child, the one who had never faced the consequences of his actions, now needed my help. The real world had hit him like a freight train. I grabbed my friend's car keys from the counter, my thoughts racing, calculating how I would respond to this sudden twist in the saga of my family. I needed to see it for myself, to witness the storm that had finally caught up with Daniel. I leaned back against the couch, staring at my phone. So now they needed me? How interesting. I wasn't in any rush to respond. Instead, I let them stew in their own desperation. If my brother had truly screwed up, whatever happened must have been monumental enough to make my parents, who had never once stood by me, finally reach out to me. Their desperation was palpable. After about 10 minutes of silence, the messages began to flood in. Dad's text flashed on the screen, "We don't have time for your attitude, just come home." Then Mom's text followed, "Please, this is serious." Serious? That word almost made me laugh. When my problems were serious, they told me to get over it. But now, suddenly, the world was ending because Daniel was in trouble. How urgent everything became when the golden child was in danger. I took my time crafting my next response. Not my problem. A minute passed. Then another. Then my dad called. I let it ring. I declined the call, letting the silence hang like a weight. A second later, another text popped up from him. "You're being selfish." I exhaled sharply, a bitter chuckle escaping my lips. Selfish? That was rich coming from him. Then Mom's text came through again. "Your brother's been arrested." I blinked, the words sinking in. Okay, now I was interested. My curiosity had finally been piqued. I grabbed my friend's car keys off the counter. "I need a ride," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Thought you were done with them." I smirked. "Oh, I am. But I need to see this for myself." 15 minutes later, I pulled up in front of the house. My dad was pacing on the porch, phone in hand, looking more stressed than I had ever seen him. My mom sat on the steps, her head in her hands, her whole demeanor unraveling in the face of her own panic. For once, there was no laughter, no dismissive remarks, only pure, unfiltered fear. The silence between us hung heavy, like a thick fog. I took my time walking up to them, savoring the moment. When I reached them, I casually asked, "Who wants to tell me what happened?" My dad turned sharply, his eyes cold as daggers. "Where the hell have you been?" I raised an eyebrow, my voice dripping with indifference. "Not here like you wanted." He clenched his jaw, but before he could speak, my mom, her voice trembling, cut him off. "It's your brother." She paused, her voice cracking as she struggled to find the words. "He stole something from the wrong people." I frowned, confusion crossing my face. "The wrong people?" Dad ran a hand over his face, like the weight of the world was finally pressing down on him. "Some guys from that arcade he hangs out at. We don't know the details, but they called the cops. He's in holding right now." I almost laughed. Of course. My brother had spent years treating me like garbage, thinking he was untouchable. And now the real world had hit him like a truck. I crossed my arms, my expression a mask of indifference. "And what do you want me to do about it?" Mom gave me a desperate look, her eyes pleading, a reflection of the turmoil in her soul. "We need money for a lawyer, bail, something. We need your help." Her voice cracked, and I could hear the desperation vibrating in her words, like the final cry of someone who had already drowned but was reaching out in vain for a lifeline. I stared at her for a long moment, my heart cold, my mind calculating. Finally I smiled, not because I found it funny but because I realized the twisted irony of it all. They needed me. But I didn't need them. After all the years of being pushed aside, of being treated like I was invisible, they now looked at me like I was their only hope. And in a way I was. I tucked my hands into my pockets, tilting my head slightly as I let the weight of the moment settle in the air between us. "So let me get this straight," I said, my voice low and deliberate. "You told me I was unwanted. You let my brother treat me like garbage. You didn't care when I walked out. But now, because he's in trouble, you suddenly remember I exist." Dad's jaw tightened, the muscles in his neck visibly pulsing as his anger rose, but he said nothing. I could see the frustration boiling behind his eyes. He opened his mouth, probably to say something about family, but I wasn't listening to the words anymore. I knew them too well. "This isn't about that. This is about family," he finally grumbled, his words hollow and empty. I laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of humor. It was a laugh tinged with bitterness, sharp and cutting. "Oh, now we're family?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "That's funny because last night I was a burden. I was the one who didn't belong." Mom's eyes were pleading, but this time it wasn't a plea for love. It was a plea for action, for my help, for my money. The desperation was so palpable it nearly suffocated me. "Please, we can talk about all of that later," she said, her voice shaking. "Right now we need to get him out before this gets worse." I let out a slow breath, pretending to think it over. The silence stretched between us, thick like the air before a storm. "How much money are we talking about?" I asked, my tone cold, detached. Dad sighed heavily, the weight of his own pride pressing down on him. "Bail is set at $20,000. Pay a portion, but we need you to cover the rest." I whistled softly, the sound echoing in the quiet room. $10,000, huh? I leaned back, letting the words hang in the air like a thick fog. "Sounds serious." My mom perked up slightly, like a dog wagging its tail, waiting for a scrap of food. "So you'll do it?" she asked, her voice almost hopeful. I smirked, the expression a perfect mask for the coldness inside. "Oh, absolutely not." Their faces fell faster than I had ever seen. A flicker of disappointment, no, of something worse, passed through their eyes. I almost felt bad, almost. But then Dad snapped. "Excuse me." His voice was sharp, a knife cutting through the moment. I simply shrugged, my response as cold as ice. "Not my problem." Mom's voice cracked, and for a brief moment, I almost thought I saw a flicker of genuine regret in her eyes. "But he's your brother." She said it like it was supposed to mean something. But the words felt hollow, like a ghost trying to hold on to the remnants of a memory. "No," I corrected her, my voice steady, unwavering. "He's your son." I met her eyes. And let the weight of those words sink in. "And you made it very clear that I was never part of this family." Dad stepped forward, his anger flashing in his eyes like fire. He tried to push his way through my resolve, but it was futile. "You think you're proving a point?" he barked. "You think this is funny?" I met his glare without flinching. "No," I said, my voice calm, almost too calm. "I think it's fair." Mom reached for my arm, but I took a step back, my eyes cold. "You think I'd trust you?" I asked, my voice thick with the weight of years of betrayal. "The same people who threw me away without a second thought?" Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She had nothing to say. And I didn't wait for her to find the right words. I shook my head almost pityingly. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my tone firm, final. "You're going to figure this out without me, just like you always wanted." And I'm going to walk away just like you told me to. I turned on my heel and walked toward my friend's car. The weight of their disbelief following me like a shadow. Behind me my dad shouted, his voice desperate, "Don't you dare walk away from us." I glanced over my shoulder, the words hanging in the air between us like smoke. "You already did it first." Then I got into the car and drove away, leaving them to wallow in the mess they created. As I drove, my hands clenched around the steering wheel, but the anger wasn't there anymore. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt like I finally got the last laugh. But instead I felt hollow, not because I regretted my decision, they had it coming. No, it was because after everything, even after they begged for my help, I knew deep down that they still saw me as nothing more than a tool to fix their problems. I had walked away, but I was still the same invisible child to them. I knew they still didn't see me as family. They saw me as nothing more than a solution, a wallet, a safety net, something to fall back on when everything else failed. And now that net was gone, I felt a strange kind of satisfaction settle over me, knowing they could no longer depend on me to bail them out of their mess. That night, I sat in my apartment scrolling through my phone, savoring a greasy burger from my favorite takeout place. It was peaceful, quiet, the kind of night I hadn't had in years. The kind of night that felt like freedom after suffocating under that roof. I had half a mind to turn my phone on silent to ignore them entirely, but curiosity got the best of me. Surprise, surprise, my family hadn't given up. My mom had sent 3 messages in a row. "We can work something out, please, let's talk. Your brother is still in jail. We're struggling to get the money together. Please, I know we were harsh before, but we're family." I nearly choked on my soda. Now we're family? Now they cared? How rich. The words hung in the air like a bad joke. I was debating whether to even respond when another text popped up, this time from Dad. "Look, we can repay you. You just need to trust us." I laughed out loud. Trust them? The same people who had spent years treating me like an unwanted guest in my own home? The same people who told me to leave without a second thought? Yeah, right. I was about to put my phone down when another message came through, this time from my brother. "Come on, man. You're really going to let me rot in here?" This was too good. After everything he put me through, all the times he pushed me around, mocked me, called me useless, now he was asking for my help? I decided to have a little fun with him. "You told me no one wanted me around. I'm just respecting your wishes." I sent it. Read. No response. I smiled to myself, stretched my arms behind my head and took another bite of my burger. Life was good. The next morning I woke up to a flood of messages. Groggily I rubbed my eyes, unlocked my phone and started scrolling. Apparently things were getting rough for the family. Back home. We had to sell the TV and Dad's golf clubs. "Your mother is furious with me. Hope you're happy. Please, we don't know what to do anymore." And then the best one came through, from my brother. "I swear to God, when I get out, you better pray I don't find you." Now that was hilarious. The same guy who needed my help was threatening me. I couldn't help but laugh. I decided to respond just to mess with him. That's some strong language for someone who needs my help. Try again. An hour passed. Then finally my mom swallowed her pride and sent another message. "Please, we're really struggling." I let her sit in that desperation for a few minutes, letting the weight of it settle before I replied. "Tell you what," I wrote. "I'll bail him out on one condition." He didn't hesitate. "Anything," she said, eager for the relief. I smirked. "I want a public apology in the family group chat. A long one. I want you all to admit every horrible thing you've said to me and thank me for helping." I knew that would shatter Mark's pride, but if they wanted my help so badly, they'd have to crawl for it. Let them squirm, it was only fair. Sure enough, after what felt like an eternity of silence, a new message finally appeared in the family group chat. "We need to talk about how we've treated you. We've made mistakes and we realize now how much we've hurt you. We deeply regret our words and actions. You are an important part of our family, and we are grateful for your generosity and for helping us during this difficult time." It was stiff. It was forced. And it was utterly humiliating for them. Perfect. I could practically taste the bitterness in their words. I responded with nothing but a simple thumbs up emoji, the perfect symbol of how little I cared. And with that I went about my day. Did I actually bail Daniel out? Absolutely not. But at least for the first time I got the apology I always deserved. The following week my phone buzzed with a call from Daniel. "Man, I can't believe you did this to me," he growled through the phone, his voice thick with frustration. "I thought you were better than this." I couldn't help but laugh. It wasn't the kind of laugh filled with malice. It was the kind of laugh you get when the universe hands you exactly what you deserve. Better than what I asked for. My tone was light, almost playful. "I'm just giving you what you wanted. You told me I wasn't wanted, remember?" I let that hang in the air for a moment. "So now you get to stay exactly where you belong." I could hear him slamming something against the jail bars in the background, the sound like a pathetic reminder of the consequences of his own actions. You can't do this. You're really just leaving me here. I let the silence stretch, letting his words fall into the abyss between us. And then I responded, my voice steady with a finality that could not be ignored. I thought I might bail you out. I really did. But you and the rest of the family have made it pretty clear that I don't matter. I paused, letting the words hang in the air, their weight settling between us like a thick fog. So now I get to laugh. I get to enjoy my life knowing that I'm out here living it on my terms. While you're stuck. Enjoy your stay. He didn't say anything for a while and I could almost picture him fuming on the other end of the line, his fists clenched with frustration. But I didn't care. After years of being treated like an afterthought, like some invisible shadow in the background, this was my moment. The moment when I finally took back control. When I hung up the phone, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I wasn't angry anymore. In fact, the resentment that used to burn deep inside me, the feeling of being overlooked and dismissed, was gone. It had melted away, like ice under the warmth of the sun. And just like that, my brother stayed in jail. They tried everything to get him out, pulling strings, begging anyone who would listen. But the charges were serious enough that it was beyond their reach. They begged, they pleaded, but the truth was they needed me far more than I ever needed them. As for me, I walked away head high, knowing that I had finally reclaimed my power. I didn't need to lift a finger to make their lives miserable. They'd already done that for me. All I had to do was sit back, enjoy my peace, and know that they would never ever see me the same way again. Every time I glanced at my phone, its constant reminders of how desperate they were, I smiled. Because in the end it wasn't just about the money. It was about the sweet, satisfying taste of revenge. And for the first time in a long time I was finally living for me. Honestly, this story feels almost cathartic, doesn't it? The protagonist was treated terribly by his family, yet the way he flipped the script and chose not to help his brother after all that was nothing short of brilliant. It was the perfect revenge, and he didn't even have to do anything drastic. All he had to do was let them face the consequences of their actions. What do you think? Was it the right call or did he go too far? Would you have stepped in to help or did he deserve this payback? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think.